So, in your glossary, you have a slide for narrative point of view. So, you'll put this on that slide. Narrative point of view is the perspective from which a story is told. So, you're more familiar with probably the terms first person or third person. So, there's first person, second person, which is not a very common one. And then third person is divided into two. We have limited and omniscient. You can tell by what pronouns the narrator uses to describe the characters. So, if the central character is describing him or herself and saying I or me or my, it's first person. If an outside narrator is describing the characters to you and they're saying she or her or they, that is third person. And if a narrator is talking directly to you, the reader, that's second person. That one is not as common. So, narrative point of view is important because depending on who's telling the story, that can totally change your perspective of it. So that's true in life too. I mean, if you have two sides, like two friends who are fighting, depending on who tells you the story, you're going to get a different story. So that's true of storytelling as well. So in Finding Nemo, Darla and Nemo, Darla's going to have Nemo as a pet. They feel very differently about that relationship. So Darla, she is excited about having Nemo as a pet. She can't wait to take him home and love him. Nemo is petrified because the story that's been told to him is that Darla has killed every fish that she's ever owned. So their viewpoint is totally different. If Nemo told the story, it would honestly sound probably like a horror movie because he is so scared of going home with her. Same thing with the Wizard of Oz. So, in the original Wizard of Oz, who do you think the villain of the Wizard of Oz is? I think we could all pretty quickly identify that the villain of the Wizard of Oz is the Wicked Witch of the West. Her name even is Wicked Witch. And when she is talked about, they use third person. So they'll say, ding dong, the witch is dead, about the Witch of the East. They talk about how evil the Wicked Witch of the West is. They talk about her. So they are using third person when they describe her. But when we watch the clip from Wicked, and I will post this for you to watch, your perspective totally changes. So you don't see her as an evil witch. You see her as a person with hopes and dreams and goals outside of just, taking shoes off of a little girl, which is that's a weird plot. Anyway, so your impression after seeing it through her point of view instead of Dorothy's point of view will totally change. So you'll watch this video and then fill out these two. So the four actually, different points of view that we'll talk about: first, second, and then third limited, and third omniscient. First person is when the person who is telling the story is in the story. They're an active character within the story. This is usually the most personal and the most subjective. So you want to be very careful that you don't believe everything that the narrator tells you. You are getting the story through their point of view. If you like the narrator, then you're probably more inclined to believe them in the same way that you'd be more inclined to believe like your friend over somebody else. But, we all stretch the truth, and you just have to be careful with first person narration that you don't believe everything. So we have the pronouns I, my, me, and mine. And you can see here that this character is in the story and is looking at things through her own eyes. I have examples for each of these. I can't play them during this video, so you'll have to kind of take a break from this video and watch this one instead. In this video, it's Michael Scott talking about how he is the best boss. But I want you, as you watch it, to ask yourself, do you trust what he says about himself, especially when he explains where he got the mug from? Point of view of second person. This is very rare in, at least in books. It's a hard one to do in a book. This is like a tutorial or a speech where like a commencement speech is being delivered to students who are graduating. If you're doing like a makeup tutorial and they say, first you're going to do this. recipes would be written in this, instruction manuals, anything that's meant for the reader to take information directly from. So you'll see you and your here. Your video here is You'll Be Back. Actually, sorry, What Comes Next from Hamilton. And the speaker is King George. And the audience, the you that he's talking to, is the newly freed American colonists. And because this is a musical, it's also kind of the audience of the play because this premiered in America. So we can kind of like put ourselves in the shoes of his audience as well. So you can watch this one and get a sense of second person there. And third person, we have limited and omniscient. We have all of these different pronouns here. So he, she, it, his, her. This is a narrator outside of the story who's telling the story to the reader. So omniscient, omni means all and psi means know. So when we put it together, an omniscient narrator knows all, they know everything. And you can kind of picture an omniscient narrator as like a god who is above the story and can see everything. So like if you took the top of our, sorry about the bell. If you took the top of our building off, if you took the roof off and you looked in, an omniscient narrator could look in every single room and see what's going on at that time. So if a narrator can know everything, that means that they aren't stuck with just one character. So like if I am an omniscient narrator, I can tell you what's happening in my room, and then I can tell you what's happening in Mrs. Steele's room, and I can tell you about what's happening in Mr. Bishop's room, all during second period. So you could be in multiple places at once and you could describe things that are going on. So maybe like somebody said something mean about somebody in Mr. Bishop's room, and that student was currently in my room. The kid in my room doesn't know what was said in Mr. Bishop's room, but as an omniscient narrator, that narration style would allow the reader to see both things at the same time. So if omniscient narrators are like gods, third person limited is like a stalker. So if I am just picking one student and I'm going to tell a story about them, I take my notebook and I just follow the student around all day long. So I sit in the back of every room that they're in and I write down everything that's going on. I can't tell you about anything that happened that the person who I'm stalking didn't experience, him or herself. So if there was like a huge fight in the hallway and the person who I'm stalking was in the room at the same time, and the person who I'm stalking was in the classroom, they aren't going to know about the fight until they hear it from somebody else. And I, as the stalker narration, I'm not going to know about it until the character hears about it from somebody else either. So third person limited is only able to follow one person and tell things from their point of view. So you can see this incredibly creepy picture down here. We have the narrator who's like staring at this person, the focus character. So we see everything through their eyes, but we tell it through a third person narration instead. This is a clip from Stranger Than Fiction, which is a movie starring Will Ferrell, where he is a character in an author's story, but he starts hearing her narration in his head. So she's a narrator outside of the story who's describing him. So she talks about all the things he does in the morning to get ready, and she kind of narrates his life, but it's in third person. You will take a minute, you can pause the video here to figure out which person, first, second, or third each one is. And if it's third person, you should say whether it's limited or omniscient. These are just a couple pictures to help you remember this. So there's the first person here. If the second person is talking directly to that person, it's you. And then if this third person is describing these two people, it's third. And then we have first person, he's thinking, I was sitting at my desk when they walked in. And then third person limited, he was writing at his desk when they walked in, so describing it. And then third person omniscient says no one in the whole world had ever liked Bob. So they're taking other people's viewpoints here and sharing them. When we talk about narrative point of view, it's essential that we talk about objectivity as well. So like I said, your first person narration is sometimes the hardest to believe because it's only coming through one person's point of view. So you want narration ideally to be objective, reliable, and unbiased. So objective means they're not influenced by personal feelings or opinions, and they just consider the facts and present them as they are. Reliable means able to be trusted, and bias is prejudice that's in favor of one side or against the other. Your vocab word partisan this week is related to the word bias. If you are a partisan, you are biased and not objective. So if we take this scenario, imagine you got in trouble for arguing with the teacher in class. Who will most likely give the most objective and reliable account to Mr. Steinbeck? So we have you, the teacher, your best friend, a kid who heard about it in the hall, or a paraprofessional who helps in the class. So you'll take a moment to pause the video and you can answer the question down there, thinking about who will have the least amount of bias and will tell the most straightforward story. After you've done that, you can watch this unreliable narrator video. I will post it on Google Classroom so you can access it.